This is the Cleveland Podcast.
Hello again, everyone. This is your favorite mud monster, Fred here, and today it's just me, no Caesar, because of, well, quarantine, which means that you'll just get to listen to this wonderful, wonderful voice for an entire episode. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk for an hour like we usually do because we have no guests. I don't think any guest would dare even approach my apartment at this point, as pretty much everyone is terrified, and rightfully so, of the outbreak and how it's affecting lives. You see it all the time on social media. You see it in news, how the entire world has been greatly affected by this virus, and particularly the United States is now starting to really feel the damage that countries like China and Italy were feeling just months or weeks before. I've only gone out now, I think 3 times in the past 3 or 4 weeks, which means that my apartment's a little bit messy because I'm now just living in it practically 24 hours a day. It's actually a lot cleaner than I thought. Pretty diligent on cleaning the mud at this point. But what are we doing today? We're talking about coronavirus again. And you go, oh, but we already covered this, Fred. You had the whole thing about the viruses and the hit and various different plagues that happened. And then Caesar talked about just how Cleveland is dealing with the virus. Yes, we did talk about those things. But obviously, with the numerous stay-at-home orders throughout the country, people are now staying at home. They're also starting to feel like they're losing their minds a little bit because now they're stuck with their families 24/7. There's no 8 hours of getting away from the family and then coming home. There's also just the destruction of a regular schedule. And unfortunately, there are many people who have lost their jobs over this entire outbreak. That means a lot of people have extra free time on their hands. And what better way to utilize free time than to explain what you can do these days to occupy time, to make sure that you are productive or at least entertained throughout the COVID-19 outbreak. And there's a lot of things that we can recommend that are quite Cleveland specific. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's first begin with this article that is from Thrive Global. And it's done by a person named Katrina, who is a blogger and the creator of Nurse Millennial, 19 Things to Do at Home During the COVID-19 Pandemic. Here are the 19, and I'm going to respond to these. Keep up with accurate COVID-19 news. Yes, you should be aware of what's going on. At the same time, don't overdo it. I think there are many people who are probably updating the news almost all the time. I remember I would see my grandma watch CNN all the time, and in the last few years of her life, I remember just her being so negative at the end, and she would just repeat the news that she would see all the time because she would leave CNN on 24/7. Even when she was sleeping, it just caused her to be very negative. It caused her to just be distrusting of everything around her. She became just a hard person to be around. At the same time, she was still my grandma, and she had her moments of still being the lovely grandma that I remembered as a young kid. If you're someone who's constantly on your phone, which is most of us, then I would even maybe do a tally chart or a tally sheet of how many times you check the news, just on a regular day without you really trying to kind of curtail it. I currently kind of have boiled down my amount of checking for Google News around to 4 or 5 times a day, which is much better than what it used to be before the outbreak. Because when you read the news, it's constant it's just more and more bad news. Now, you need to be aware of the bad news, but at the same time, when you read so much negativity, it could certainly bring you down, and it can cause you to make some decisions that may not be the best. It may cause you to say things that are not ideal. Therefore, really just be careful when you're trying to access all this news. It could be quite scary to look at all the numbers and see the charts, see who's sick, who's died. You just need to make sure that you're healthily aware of what the facts are, because once we keep reading these articles with the death tolls rising, you really start to think it's the apocalypse, which, if you listen to our last episode, I talked about how there have been other illnesses that have been far, far deadlier. Yes, coronavirus is deadly, but again, there have been illnesses far, far deadlier that have wiped out quarter or half of the world's population within a couple of decades. Therefore, just try and keep in perspective. Number 2, Katrina recommends, checking in with yourself, family, and friends. I'd say this is pretty important. If you feel like you haven't really reached out to that one friend that you haven't talked to in a long time that you want to stay in touch with, go ahead. This is a perfect time to do that, honestly. And particularly, this is a good time because we're all pretty much stuck at home, unless if you're an essential employee. Even if you're going out for work, find time to just reach out to old friend from college. Maybe you have a relative that you haven't talked to in a while. Reach out to them. See how they're doing. See if they need anything. And then just recreate that relationship. It's a potential silver lining during this time of crisis to re-establish old relationships that may have just been damaged by just the sheer amount of time between communications. Number 3, pray or meditate. If you're religious, this is a pretty good idea. This is a good recommendation. I would say not only just meditate, but self-reflect. This is an opportunity to really assess how you feel like your life is going. Because once this is over, the world will change. Our whole society will change at some level. Even if things seem almost normal by the time this pandemic comes to an end. What's important is when you self-reflect, think about where you are right now. Do you feel like you're happy with your life? Do you feel like you're in a good situation? What can you do to make it better or to maintain the good life that you may have right now? And then see what future goals you want to set up. I know for myself, I've been trying to get a whole bunch of projects that I've been trying to get started. In fact, a friend of mine is trying to start another podcast with me as a co-host. Surprise, surprise. Fred's going on multiple podcasts now. This other podcast is much different. It's about scientific data and research and healthcare. And yes, I actually know about those things. Just because I'm goofy doesn't mean that I don't have a good noodle. It's just that I'd rather just be a little bit goofy than always talk about information that may prove to not be as interesting for you guys. DC is someone that appeared in one of our commercials during the photography episode with Jacob Chabowski. So DC and I will be actually doing that healthcare podcast because DC has a job related to that field, and I work with clients in that field quite often. But anyway, number 4, adjust your social habits. This one's a little bit of an interesting one. I'm not too sure what she means by this. Maybe just less in-person meetings, which obviously you want to contain the spread of this virus. Here's some interesting things. If you're looking for social activity, meeting new people, there are some things going on that actually are potentially good things to do for social activity. Online activity, you have some people doing these social calls. For instance, for the Cleveland 20s and 30s and Cleveland 30s and 40s on Meetup, there are actually some online events you can attend that you can RSVP to, and then you have things like board games, mostly just really fun activities that you can do. Go around to the Meetup pages for Cleveland 20s and 30s, Cleveland 30s and 40s, and you can find some activities, meet new people, all while you are just sitting on your bed, your couch, your chair, or whatever. And then additionally, one that I highly recommend if you want to get some additional professional development is Toastmasters. So Toastmasters, despite the fact that they're mostly just in-person clubs, most of the clubs in Northeast Ohio for Toastmasters have actually begun to do online meetings via Zoom, which means if you've always wanted to learn a little bit more about public speaking, maybe you're a little bit nervous, maybe you need some public speaking skills for your next job, and now you're looking for a new one or you're looking for a business, go to Toastmasters to develop those public speaking communication skills. I will say that these online meetings for Toastmasters so far have been really exciting and quite cool because these Toastmasters, including myself, are at least half decent communicators. You'll get at least good conversation. You'll get to meet new people. Additionally, you'll get to learn some public speaking tips. You'll get to observe a really cool meeting. Toastmasters also has online speaking contests, which we'll be potentially sharing in the episode notes, potentially, depending on when this episode comes out. If you want to know more about these online meetings, there is a Facebook page called District 10 Toastmasters. You could just say, I heard about Toastmasters from a podcast. Do you have an online meeting going on with one of your clubs? I'd like to know more. You can go to toastmasters.org as well to send an email to the club officers, which, yes, that's possible. What you do is go under toastmastersinternational.org. Then you go under Find a Club. Then you'll see something that says Contact the Club. You could do a phone call or you could do an email, and then you can get the Toastmasters online meeting link from there. There will be some clubs that are not meeting online, but most are. I would recommend, though, to try that out. See if that would catch your fancy for our listeners out there. All right, the next one. Gather things you no longer use. That's kind of obvious. Spring cleaning, right? Clean your home. Reevaluate your budget. Given that people are starting to receive reductions in their salary or losing their jobs, evaluating your budget's pretty essential during this point. When you have like a certain number that you can utilize and visualize in terms of what amount of money you're spending, you'll start to keep track of it. Therefore, you'll be able to at least hit around that number or even below it. And particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic, there are going to be days where you're not going to spend a single dime on anything, which is just fantastic, which allows you to save up a little bit of money. If you're a little bit hot under the collar due to bills, and maybe the paycheck is not as good as it used to be, then you can try a little bit of extra budgeting. Or if you feel like you can live on less, go for it. All of a sudden, you might be able to save up a couple decent dollars. You might then be able to potentially have a little bit of extra money, particularly during this entire outbreak, because we don't know how long this outbreak will continue. Read a book. I'll say that this is a really good idea. You want to increase your knowledge. You want to expand what you know. I know for me that reading books, my graduate class is particularly helpful for this because I'm reading all these books of quintessential American literature, which is pretty cool, but it's also pretty depressing because a lot of these books that the professors picked are certainly not very positive. But if you want a couple of books that might help you a little bit, I might recommend The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Peale. That's actually a book that, although it's a little bit outdated, it does have some decent ideas for helping you get through this time. Additionally, if you want something that's a little bit more exciting, that has really crazy ideas, I'd recommend the autobiography of Malcolm X, talking about the civil rights activist Malcolm X. But if you want some classic literature, a great book to read would be The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. That's a particularly interesting book. It's very complex, but it's not too long, but it's an interesting book about colonialism in Africa during the 19th and early 20th century. If you're interested in that type of stuff, or if you just want to do something that just occupies your time, go ahead and read those books. Then we have try a new workout. Obviously, you should try some home workout regimes. If you're really curious about some home workout techniques, I actually recommend Adam Brown Fitness. Adam Brown was someone who was on one of our commercials on the same episode as a DC episode and the Jacob Chabowski episode. He does a lot of personal training. And recently on Facebook, he's been doing a lot of workout recommendations for at home, like yoga poses and strength training. He was a former minor league strength and conditioning coach at the Miami Marlins and a former strength and conditioning intern at the Cleveland Indians. This guy really knows his stuff. As a legitimate professional trainer, he's trained athletes, not your high school athletes, the professionals, the best of the best. I really recommend Brown Fitness and Performance. Great place to get some good recommendations. You'll get around 40-minute videos on workout tips that can really help you out. And then you have eat what you have at home. Obviously, try some new recipes, create new stuff, try some cool things. Plan the next grocery gas run. If you really need to get out, I'd recommend just try to build the anticipation. Maybe have it on the calendar. It's very sad when we have to plan when we're going out, but alas, we are in this strange time. Plan a video chat date. If you have a loved one, go for it. Try and plan a date just to meet up and talk. I know a couple friend groups of mine have been doing little online games and online meetings that have been very, very interesting, although I've not really attended them myself because I've been strangely busier than ever before during this entire outbreak. There are some weeks where I'm just booked from end to end. I don't try to overbook myself, but for some reason, I had plenty of extra work these past couple of weeks. This is the first week where things are a little bit slow. And then some other things she recommends here. This Katrina person dedicates some time for a beauty routine, catch up on quality sleep. Remember, you're not alone. Yes, those are all pretty important things. But then, where are some other interesting things you can do? You could try various different apps. In fact, here's a fun little app, Art Lens. This is an app that breaks down all the various different art pieces from the Cleveland Museum of Art. If you're interested in art, or if you just like looking at fancy, goofy looking things, you could try out the Art Lens app and you can look at the various different paintings in the online format, the artists, and you can get special curation from those who work at the Museum of Art. Really cool, fascinating stuff. And then finally, but an interesting suggestion people have been really bringing up a lot has been starting that side hustle, starting that business. Of course, that's up to you how you want to approach that, but that could be something that really could spark your future, become something that becomes your main job, pursue that passion of yours. That could be something that really is quite useful. Again, this episode was fairly all over the place. This is an episode that was talking about just pretty much COVID-19 in the general sense of what you can do during this time. For the future, try these different things and maybe incorporate them into your future routine. Again, I highly recommend Toastmasters. I recommend the Art Lens app. I recommend the blogs. I recommend Adam Brown Fitness. Those are all pretty interesting things that you can do that allow you to still stay Cleveland even when you are stuck inside your homes. We're still Clevelanders. We still are residents of the city, and we can still do things that are distinctly fun Cleveland. You can order out from restaurants, get takeout, check out the Art Lens app, support local businesses like Brown Fitness and Performance, go to different online meetings like Toastmasters and learn additional information, get with a buddy, just have a chat, maybe meet with a longtime friend. I know for my family, we played Scrabble recently. I beat my mother for the 15th straight time, who, by the way, almost got her PhD. I beat her 15 straight times in Scrabble. I did come up with some crazy words that I had to look up because I thought, oh, I heard it one time. Turns out those were actual words, at least some of them. But there was also half the time where I put some random letters together. I'm like, I might have heard this one once or twice is a word maybe. And then it wasn't a word. But anyway, the point is I beat my mother on online Scrabble. We used FaceTime. There's all types of clever things you can do. Again, stay healthy, wash your hands, don't go out unless if it's essential, keep yourselves intact. We'll see you later.
Thank you for listening to the show. You can find us online at facebook.com/The Cleveland Podcast, or get links to all of our various different social media pages at theclevelandpodcast.com. You can also find links on our website to our YouTube channel, Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, and more. You can leave us a voicemail at 216-200-7940 or interact with us on Reddit, Facebook, or Twitter. Have a great day, Cleveland.